If they had a good profit, they shared liberally with their brethren. If they had a meager profit, they shared what they could afford. Or to put it another way, they had all things in common as far as their mental attitude was concerned. But legally, they retained their property as private possessions. Such an arrangement was entirely in keeping with their Christian ideology, and it avoided the problems which would have arisen if they had entered into a communist pact by pooling their property into a single community fund. What do the authorities say? Although there has been a widespread misunderstanding of the principles of cooperative effort practiced by the early Christians, the authorities have stated the case clearly. In Drummelow's Bible commentary, these observations on these verses previously quoted are found. The Church of Jerusalem recognized the principle of private property. A disciple's property really was his own, but he did not say it was his own. He treated it as if it were common property. In other words, some people go around and say, this is my car, this is my thing. But some people that I know even say, well, this car is God's car. God tells me to give it to somebody, I'll give it to somebody. So in that same kind of thought process, this is what they were thinking. It's for the good of the whole. The Christian ideal of treating one's possessions as being a God-given trust for the welfare of one's fellow men is called the stewardship principle. It has always been the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that the stewardship principle is the basic Christian practice for both ancient and modern times. As Joseph Smith said in his diary, I preached on the stand about 1 hour on the 2nd chapter of Acts, designing to show the folly of common stock. In Nauvoo, everyone is steward over his own. Doctrinal History of the Church, Volume 6, page 37. When a person treats his property as a stewardship, it gives him the blessing of voluntarily sharing his substance with those in need. It is conducive to a spirit of brotherhood. It leaves a man with all the initiative and creative expression he may desire. It makes the poor the beneficiaries of his labor, to the extent he voluntarily desires to give it. Out of such an arrangement comes peace and goodwill toward men. Why there is no such thing as Christian communism. Communist principles, on the other hand, seem to violate every instinct of human nature. They destroy initiative, nullify free agency, suppress inventive exploration, minimize the dignity of the individual, and make a god out of the state, into which is delegated complete, unrestricted control over life, liberty, and property. During the lifetime of Karl Marx, his principles were put to work on a brotherhood basis in many communities throughout the world. Although he was violently atheistic and said his purposes in life was to dethrone God and to destroy capitalism, nevertheless, many thought they saw in his program the elements of a Christian utopia. But of the many communities where the communist experiment was tried, none found it possible to permanently succeed. It was only when the professional revolutionary Lenin put a whole nation under the sword that it was possible to force any appreciable number of human beings to endure the practice of communist theory for any length of time. Like so many other weak systems of government, it can only survive in an atmosphere of the slave state with a supreme dictator at the head. So in answer to our question, did the early Christians practice communism? Let me summarize by saying that superficially it may appear from the two brief verses of Scripture in the book of Acts that they did. But when we analyze what communism really is and then compare it with what the procedure was actually followed by the early Christians, we can say that they were practicing the principle of stewardship and not communism. And now I may leave with you this gem of divine wisdom from a modern scripture which says, For it is expedient that I, the Lord, should make every man accountable as a steward over earthly things. For the earth is full, and there is enough, and to spare. Yea, I prepare all things, and have given unto the children of men to be agents unto themselves. Therefore, if any man shall take of the abundance which I have made, and impart not of his portion according to the law of my gospel unto the poor and the needy, he shall with the wicked lift up his eyes in hell. Doctrine and Covenants 104, 13, 17 through 18.